The conference room at Morrison Ventures smelled like leather and ambition. The kind of place where million-dollar deals were scribbled on napkins and careers were made or destroyed over artisanal coffee. I sat in the corner with my laptop, exactly where my brother Daniel had pointed when we'd walked in. "She'll take notes," he'd said dismissively to the assembled investors, not even bothering to introduce me properly. "Alexandra handles my administrative tasks." 3 years. 3 years since I'd bailed out his failing startup with my own money, letting him take the credit while I rebuilt my empire in the shadows. 3 years of being introduced as his secretary, his assistant, his helper, while he basked in the glow of success I'd orchestrated. "Gentlemen, shall we begin?" Daniel commanded the room with the confidence of someone who'd never truly failed, because his little sister had always caught him before he hit the ground. Morrison Ventures' expansion into defense contracting is going to revolutionize the industry. I typed quietly, documenting his promises and projections. The investors, 5 men in identical Navy suits, leaned forward with interest. Carson Walsh from Apex Capital, David Liu from Fortitude Investments, and 3 others whose names Daniel hadn't bothered to share with me. "The numbers look impressive," Carson said, flipping through Daniel's presentation. "But defense contracting requires serious connections. What's your angle?" Daniel's smile was all teeth and no substance. "We have insider knowledge and relationships at the highest levels. I can't reveal all our cards, but let's just say we have access to decision-makers others can only dream of." I almost laughed. His insider knowledge consisted of gossip from his country club golf buddies. His relationships were LinkedIn connections who hadn't responded to his messages. "And your team?" David Liu asked. "Who's handling the technical side?" "I've assembled the best," Daniel said smoothly. "Top talent from across the industry. My secretary here can provide the full list if needed." His secretary. I saved the document with perhaps more force than necessary. The lead investor stood up. "Wait, aren't you the Alexandra Reed who just acquired General Dynamics?" The room froze. Thomas Hartwell, the lead investor I hadn't recognized with his new haircut, was staring at me with growing recognition. He pulled out his phone, swiping to something before holding it up. The Fortune cover from last month filled the screen. My face, composed and confident, with the headline "The Quiet Titan." How Alexandra Reed built a defense empire while everyone was watching her brother. "Holy shit," someone whispered. "That's her." Daniel's face went through several expressions: confusion, disbelief, and finally, a dawning horror. That's impossible. Alexandra is my secretary." I closed my laptop with deliberate calm. "Administrative assistant? Note-taker? Which version would you prefer, Daniel? You acquired General Dynamics?" Carson Walsh's voice had gone up an octave. "The $100 billion defense contractor? Technically, my company acquired them," I corrected. "Reed Defense Solutions." Though I suppose Daniel forgot to mention that his secretary owns the largest private defense company in North America. The silence that followed was deafening. I could practically hear Daniel's career aspirations crumbling like old parchment. "But you," Daniel stammered. "You work for me. You answer my phones. You schedule my meetings." "I schedule my own meetings," I said. "Sometimes they happen to benefit you. Like this one, for instance. Did you really think Morrison Ventures got invited to pitch to Apex Capital on merit alone?" Thomas Hartwell laughed, a short, sharp sound. I knew something was off. My assistant said Alexandra Reed's office called to arrange this meeting. I assumed it was a coincidence. "There are no coincidences in defense contracting," I said. "Just strategic alignments." "Why?" Daniel's voice cracked. "Why would you do this? Pretend to be my secretary while you're running a billion-dollar empire." I stood, smoothing my simple black suit, the one he'd mocked this morning for being too conservative for a secretary. "Because 3 years ago, you came to me in tears. Morrison Ventures was failing. You'd burned through Dad's investment, alienated your partners, and were about to lose everything. You begged me to help. I never." "November 15th, 2021, I continued. "The Ritz-Carlton bar. You'd had 4 whiskeys and were crying into the 5th. You said you'd rather die than let Dad know you'd failed. So I helped. $20 million of my money, funneled through shell companies to make it look like legitimate investments. The investors were wrapped now, watching the family drama unfold better than any pitch deck. But I turned the company around," Daniel protested. "I made the deals, I secured the contracts." "You played golf," I corrected. "I made the deals. Every major contract Morrison Ventures has, I arranged them. Every strategic partnership, my relationships, every innovative idea in your presentations, mine, fed to you over breakfast while you complained about your secretary's coffee-making skills. That's not, you can't prove. I pulled out my phone, scrolling to an email thread. Would you like me to read the messages? The ones where you beg me to ghostwrite your proposals? Or maybe the recordings of our calls where you admit you don't understand basic contract law? David Liu leaned back in his chair, a slight smile on his face. So Morrison Ventures is essentially a subsidiary of Reed Defense Solutions? Unofficially, I admitted. I've been maintaining the fiction for family reasons. But since Daniel seems intent on expanding into my territory without consultation. Your territory? Daniel's face was red now. Defense contracting is open market. Is it? I asked mildly. Tell me, Daniel, which defense contractors did you plan to partner with? Lockheed. They're exclusive with Reed Defense. Boeing. We own a controlling stake. Northrop Grumman? My golf buddy runs their procurement. You're lying. Thomas Hartwell was already pulling up data on his tablet. Jesus Christ. Reed Defense has partnerships with everyone. You've got a stranglehold on the entire supply chain. He looked up at me with something approaching awe. The General Dynamics acquisition wasn't just about size. You're creating a vertical monopoly. Legally, of course, I said. All properly structured to avoid antitrust issues. My lawyers are very thorough. Why are you here? Carson asked, genuine curiosity in his voice. Why play secretary to your brother when you could buy and sell everyone in this room? It was a fair question. I moved to the window, looking out at the city skyline, half of which I own through various holdings. Because family is complicated, I said finally. Because Daniel is my brother, and despite his flaws, I didn't want to see him destroyed. Because sometimes it's easier to help from the shadows than deal with the inevitable resentment that comes from visible success. Resentment? Daniel laughed bitterly. You think I'd resent you? I turned to face him. Wouldn't you? You already resent me for being better at math in high school. For graduating summa cum laude when you barely passed. For building my first company while you were still figuring out your major. What would you have done if you'd known your little sister was worth 50 times your entire company? His silence was answer enough. So you let me humiliate you? He asked quietly. Let me treat you like hired help? I let you show me who you really are, I corrected. Every dismissive comment, every time you took credit for my work, every moment you introduced me as just the secretary. You told me exactly how you see me. Not as your sister who saved your career, but as someone beneath you. I didn't know. That's the point, Daniel. You didn't know I was rich and powerful, so you treated me like I was worthless. What does that say about you? The investors were shifting uncomfortably now, probably wondering if they should leave. But Thomas Hartwell seemed fascinated. So what happens now? He asked. Do you pull the plug on Morrison Ventures? I considered it. One phone call, and I could destroy everything Daniel had built, or thought he'd built. Every contract would evaporate, every partnership would dissolve. Morrison Ventures would be a memory by morning. No, I said finally. I'm not vindictive. Daniel can keep his company. But there are going to be changes. Changes? Daniel echoed. First, you're going to start telling the truth. About who saved Morrison Ventures, about where the strategic insights come from, about why you suddenly have access to defense contracts a company your size shouldn't be able to touch. That would ruin me. No, I said. It would humble you. There's a difference. Second, you're going to stop treating support staff like they're beneath you. Every secretary, every assistant, every note-taker is a human being deserving of respect. And third, you're going to actually learn the business. No more golf course deals and liquid lunches. You want to play in defense contracting? Learn how it works. I'll give you 6 months of training at Reed Defense. You'll start in procurement, work your way up. If you can handle it. You want me to work for you? I want you to work, period. For the first time in your life. I gathered my things, preparing to leave. The investors here can decide if they still want to fund Morrison Ventures, knowing it's been propped up by your sister's charity. Either way, I'm done playing secretary. Ms. Reed, Thomas Hartwell stood. Before you go, Apex Capital has been trying to get a meeting with you for months. Would you consider discussing a partnership? With Apex or with Morrison Ventures? With you, he said firmly. Morrison Ventures is clearly not the opportunity we thought it was. But Reed Defense, we could bring significant value to your expansion plans. I smiled. Have your people call mine. My real people. not the brother who thinks I'm only good for taking notes. Alexandra, wait. Daniel's voice was desperate now. You can't just leave. We're family. We are, I agreed. Which is why you're getting a second chance instead of a lawsuit. But Daniel, this is your only second chance. Waste it, and you'll learn what happens when someone who can acquire General Dynamics decides you're a liability. I headed for the door, pausing as the other investors scrambled to their feet. Ms. Reed, could we have a moment? I'm sure you could discuss potential opportunities. If you're looking for additional capital. I held up a hand, silencing them. Gentlemen, a word of advice. When someone tells you their secretary will take notes, look at the secretary. Really look. You never know when you're dismissing the most powerful person in the room. As I reached the door, Daniel called out one more time. Alexa, I'm sorry. I turned back. He called me Alexa. Not Alexandra, not his secretary. Alexa, the nickname from when we were kids, before success and failure divided us. I know, I said softly. But sorry doesn't erase 3 years of disrespect. You want forgiveness? Earn it. Prove you can see people for who they are, not what they can do for you. How? Start by succeeding without me. Build something real. And the next time someone tells you their secretary will take notes. I smiled. Introduce them properly. You never know when you're sitting across from the next Alexandra Reed. I left them there, 5 stunned investors and 1 broken brother, surrounded by the wreckage of a carefully constructed lie. The elevator ride down was silent except for the ping of my phone. Interview requests, partnership proposals, acquisition offers. The Fortune cover had opened doors, but this moment? This would open floodgates. In the lobby, my actual assistant, Marcus, with his MBA from Wharton and stock options worth millions, was waiting with my car. How did it go, Ms. Reed? Educational, I said. For everyone involved. Will you be maintaining the Morrison Ventures investment? I considered it as we pulled into traffic. For now, every empire needs a cautionary tale. Daniel can either be my greatest success story or my most public failure. His choice. And the investors? They'll call. They always do once they realize who they've been ignoring. I smiled, remembering their shocked faces. Send them my real portfolio. Let them see what they missed while they were dismissing the secretary. As we drove toward Reed Defense headquarters, a gleaming tower that made Morrison Ventures look like a lemonade stand, I thought about the Fortune cover that had started this avalanche. The quiet titan, they'd called me. After today, I doubted I'd be quiet much longer. But that was fine. 3 years in the shadows was enough. It was time for Alexandra Reed to step into the light. And if Daniel was smart, he'd learn to thrive in my shadow instead of pretending to cast his own. My phone rang. The Secretary of Defense, probably calling about the General Dynamics integration. I let it go to voicemail. He could wait 5 minutes. After all, I'd waited 3 years. The city blurred past, full of glass towers and concrete dreams. Somewhere in one of those buildings, Daniel was probably still trying to salvage his pitch. Maybe he'd succeed. Maybe he'd fail. But either way, he'd do it as himself, not as the man whose secretary was secretly running the defense industry. Marcus, I said suddenly. Schedule a family dinner. Next week. Somewhere public. Your usual table at Le Bernardine? No. Morrison Ventures' favorite steakhouse. The one where Daniel holds all his important meetings. Marcus smiled in the rearview mirror. The place where everyone knows him? Exactly. If he's going to introduce me properly, might as well start with his home turf. And if he doesn't, then I'll introduce myself. Fortune cover and all. As we pulled up to Reed Defense, I saw my reflection in the building's glass facade. Not the secretary Daniel had tried to make me, but the woman I'd always been, even when I was fetching his coffee and taking his notes. The quiet titan was done being quiet, and the defense industry would never be the same. Thanks for watching. See you again in the next video. Stay stunned.